Last year, I spent a painstakingly long amount of time working out the Black Mirror timeline. Since then, we've had season 5 of the show and Bandersnatch drop on Netflix, so we felt like it was time for an update. Also, I've had a haircut, moved to America, but kept the same lipstick. We based our initial timeline on one of the few constants in the Black Mirrorverse, the news channel UKN and its American counterpart USN. For this update, we did the same, but we also spent a lot of time freeze framing and looking at people's contact lists in their phones, as well as the trending hashtags on their social media profiles. We originally had the national anthem first in our timeline, but Bandersnatch now takes that spot. We can see from the opening that the interactive episode is set in July 1984, well before the events of the other episodes. There are some cool references to things that happen later in the Black Mirror timeline, like games named after Metalhead and Nosedive, a love machine developed by BRB, or Be Right Back, and headlines about the television shows Hot Shots and Space Fleet, the sci-fi show that Robert Daly was obsessed with in USS Callister. Bandersnatch does feature a flash-forward section, but we'll talk about that later. The national anthem comes next. We can tell because the technology really isn't that advanced. I mean, look at those mobile phones. At the end of the episode, it flashes forward to the first anniversary of the Prime Minister's fateful date with a pig. Pay attention to the UKN news ticker headlines, in particular Geraint Finch and his paparazzi scuffle, the Tilsdale fire inquiry, and Ed Povell's refuse U-turn. These exact headlines appear in Season 2's The Waldo Moment, the next episode in our timeline. This makes sense in terms of the technology on show, which again doesn't feature anything too far-fetched or futuristic. The UKN headlines also give us a direct connection to Be Right Back. Not only does UKN run a feature on the creation of the intelligent synthetic flesh that allows for Ash's body, but we can see that the ticker repeats that Geraint Finch headline again, enabling us to deduce that The Waldo Moment and Be Right Back take place at roughly the same time, so a year after the national anthem. When we pause on this UKN website, we can see a number of headlines that help place Shut Up and Dance next. We know that PM Michael Callow was having marriage difficulties, but it seems that things got too much for his wife Jane, leading to their divorce. We can also see a reference to the Spillane trial latest, so we can deduce that Victoria Spillane hasn't yet entered the White Bear Justice Park, so we can confidently place White Bear at some point after Shut Up and Dance. We also see an advert for a cookie, the consciousness transfer tech at the center of White Christmas and Black Museum. As it's being labeled as a kitchen gadget, we can assume that it's still in its infancy. There's also a ticker revealing that the game show 15 Million Merits is due to launch next week. Now, this could be a slip-up on the production team's part because the reality TV show at the center of 15 Million Merits is actually called Hot Shot, or it could be a hint towards something that I'll talk about a little later on in this video. Let's just say it wasn't an error and that 15 Million Merits is next. Sure, compared to the technology in the surrounding episodes, a dystopian world dominated by screens where people are forced to cycle on the spot to generate electricity does make it feel a little out of place. Anyway, next comes playtest. In Sonia's apartment, we get some lingering shots of her video game collection. Given that there's nothing beyond the Xbox One or PlayStation 4, we can assume it's not too far in the future. By zooming in on the Edge cover, we get a couple of nods that help place other episodes later on. The American tech company TCKR are working to turn nostalgia into a game, hinting at the genesis of San Junipero. Granular are mentioned, the company who developed the robotic bees that we see in Hated in the Nation. But before we get there, we can place the flash forward from Bandersnatch. The news ticker references the Waldo Moment's Liam Monroe entering Buckingham Palace for some reason, PM Callow winning Celebrity Bake Off, his publicist must really be working overtime, but crucially it also reveals that Granular's prototype pollinator drones are about to be unveiled, so we can place this just before Hated in the Nation. The headlines visible in this episode help to give us a really good understanding of how the timeline is progressing. For example, at the start of Hated in the Nation, it's revealed that Shu Saito has announced his new gaming system. As the episode goes on, we can see that Saito Gemu is being investigated for Cooper's disappearance, cementing the idea that this takes place shortly after playtest. There's also a reference to Reputelligent shares nosediving. Reputelligent is the consultation company that Lacey visits to get her social score up in Nosedive. Then there's this reference to PM Michael Callow posting that he just got thrown out of the zoo again. This seems a little too obvious for the real Callow to be posting, so we're counting this as a parody account or a complete red herring. We can assume that the events of the Season 3 opener occur before Hated in the Nation. Maybe. We're gonna come back to Nosedive. The events of White Bear crop up a few times in Hated in the Nation. Victoria Spillane's name appears in one of the Death Twos, as well as a trending hashtag declaring Free the White Bear 1, suggesting that her torment in the White Bear Justice Park is well underway. What's most interesting is that there's a UKN ticker referring to her attempted suicide in her jail cell. Sure, the park is kind of a prison, but it certainly isn't a cell. Again, this is something that we'll come back to later. Another ticker refers to cookies getting human rights, and the revelation that the military have commenced work on MASS, the implant used in Men Against Fire. But a couple of other episodes need to happen before we get to Men Against Fire. The recaller technology in Crocodile would be completely obsolete if grain technology was as readily available as it is in the entire history of You, and it's referred to in the Bandersnatch flashforward as being in testing by the UK police force. The reference to the hotshot judge being caught with a rent boy, Wraith Babes being on the hotel TV, and these headlines about a record number of people being blackmailed and micro-tracking being introduced for members of the royal family help us to confidently place Crocodile after the events of 15 Million Merits, Shut Up and Dance, and the national anthem. So, based on that fact, we can place Men Against Fire after Hated in the Nation. If we consider that the MASS implant was first developed for the military, then later went mass market as the grain, we can then place the entire history of You as next in the timeline. Interestingly, at the start of that episode, during Liam's job interview, they actually discussed the proposal for what would ultimately become the Archangel Initiative.
A new area we're getting lots of play in, and your office could be at the centre for, is litigation in retrospective parenting cases.
Retrospective?
Bobby sues mum and dad for insufficient attention, leading to lack of confidence, leading to damages against earnings.
Right, and we're okay. The firm's okay with that ethically and morally.
We can then place Joe's story from White Christmas. Grains were optional, but in White Christmas, everyone has a ZI, and they can't be removed. We also get a look at the blocking feature, and there's also a reference to Victoria Spillane's appeal bid being rejected, and Liam Monroe, the politician from the Waldo Moments Twitter account, being hacked. With all this in mind, we can place Archangel next, an amalgamation of the tech showcased in those last 3 episodes, Men Against Fire, Entire History of You, and White Christmas. Not only can we see footage from Men Against Fire while Sarah is having her Archangel fitted, but the chip also has all of the features of MASS and the grain combined. A few years after her Archangel is fitted, Sarah goes to a therapist due to her acting out and self-harming. It's revealed that the Archangel was banned in Europe. In Black Museum's Dr. Payne storyline, the ticker on USN reveals that the Archangel system has been pulled from the United States. The ticker also reveals that Saito has been charged with Cooper's murder. We know that the 3 stories in Black Museum happen sequentially, so that's Dr. Payne, then Jack and Carrie, then Clayton Lee. Given the passage of time in Archangel is happening alongside this, the final grisly confrontation between Sarah and Marie must also happen sometime around here. Given its name drop,
Like when they upload old people to the cloud?
we can place San Junipero before Black Museum, so let's drop it here. Given that people can be transferred to San Junipero by using the cookie, it makes sense that USS Callister takes place after that romantic story. While you still need some kind of cookie-esque neural device to enter Infinity, Daly creating digital clones of his workmates using only their DNA suggests that the technology is way more sophisticated by then. Also, as Infinity is a game and not an end-of-life service, it suggests that the tech is way cheaper and way more accessible because it's been around for a while. We'll admit that we struggled to place Hang the DJ anywhere in our timeline because it's a fairly isolated episode. We know the dating app has been seen before, in playtest and again in USS Callister. It's a bit of a floating episode, so for now let's just say that it sits somewhere around here, toward the end of our timeline.
It's a test, I swear it is, and the 2 of us rebelling together is something to do with passing it.
We can, however, confidently put Nish and Rollo's storyline from Black Museum here at the end, because the artifacts in the museum reference almost all of the previous episodes. And we can sort of place Rachel, Jack, and Ashley too here as well. I'm not gonna lie, this one does sort of screw with our timeline. For example, a news ticker reads that a museum owner's body was found in smoking ruins, so we should put it after Black Museum, because it's clearly talking about Rollo. However, it also reads Tusk makes a boo-boo on a British TV show, referring to way back and Hated in the Nation. You see what I mean about it being a bit screwy. The reason I want to have it all the way down here as opposed to earlier is because looking at the technology used in the episode, copying people's consciousnesses, etc., it seems more appropriate for the episode to happen after the events of Black Museum. It does mention that Saito Gemu's shares are soaring after the release of Striking Vipers, so I feel pretty good about putting that season 5 episode around here too. Which leaves us with Metalhead. Given that there's this reference to San Junipero, the UKN headline that the military are working on some kind of robot dog in Black Museum, and the fact that the world is completely desolate and barren, we feel pretty good about putting it at the end of this timeline. You'll notice that I've missed off Smithereens. Well, that's because it's another screwy episode, and I think it fits somewhere else. Let me explain. Naturally, some episodes proved very difficult to place in our timeline, and that's because the technology available across Black Mirror is just straight up inconsistent. Let's start with White Christmas and those damn cookies. We placed the final part with Joe and Beth midway through our timeline, purely to line it up with the blocking seen in the Archangel tech. But the headline, Callow announces divorce, would actually place it at the same time as Shut Up and Dance. While the cookies are mentioned in Shut Up and Dance as kitchen tech, the Zedi doesn't appear to be around at that time. In fact, we don't see that until Men Against Fire and the entire history of You. So maybe White Christmas is an episode that doesn't really fit, and it's just floating around at the beginning of our timeline. Nosedive also sticks out. We know because of Hated in the Nation that Reputelligence shares are plummeting, so it should theoretically take place before that. But the technology and new dystopian society in that episode just doesn't match up with others around that time. We placed Be Right Back very early on because of that Geraint Fitch headline, but it seems that the technology available to replicate a human body and house it in a robot seems way more futuristic than what was going on at that time. Men Against Fire is another one that sticks out. While there's a clear evolution of the Grain, Zedi, and Archangel tech in our timeline, you would think that more people would be talking about this huge roach threat and massive war. White Bear also feels out of place. There's plenty of references to Scyllane's trial in other episodes, and even a headline that reads that she tried to kill herself in prison, but no mention of her torment in the White Bear Justice Park at all. Smithereens almost fits around the early part of our timeline. The tech isn't that advanced, there's a lot of references to TV shows that are airing right now, and hell, it even has a date on it, 2018. But it's the references that are causing problems. In particular, this lady's phone contact list. It's a who's who of Black Mirror characters from all over our timeline, from Clayton Lee to Kelly from San Junipero, and even the Prime Minister himself. Which is why we propose that there are actually 2 timelines in Black Mirror. One real one, and one that revolves entirely around cookies. A cookie is a digitally replicated consciousness of a human being, usually placed in an external unit. From what we've seen, in a cookie, anything is possible. In White Christmas, we can see that they can be used to control your smart home, or be used as your in-game avatar, like USS Callister's Infinity. Black Museum helps to give us a rough idea of the timeline of their creation. Dr. Dawson's symphatic diagnoser provided the first steps towards digital consciousness transfer, allowing the transfer of pleasure and pain sensation between 2 subjects. From here, we know that the neural research company TCKR adapted this technology to create cookies. We can roughly place Hated in the Nation around here because a UKN ticker reveals that cookies have gained human rights. Rollo Haynes and his team managed to achieve partial consciousness transfer, as we can see with Carrie, Jack, and Monkey, and gaining human rights means that she can't then be deleted. Rollo reveals that a few years after Carrie and Jack's story, the UN made it illegal to transfer consciousness into limited formats like toys. By the time we reach Clayton Lee's story, Rollo has been fired from TCKR after the fallout from Carrie, but full consciousness transfer technology is available. As for the Rollo and Nish story in Black Museum, based on the displays inside the museum and the conversation between Nish and Rollo, by the time the events of that episode occur, USS Callister and San Junipero have already happened. So while we have this loose framework in place, there's a popular fan theory that suggests that some episodes take place entirely within cookies, and honestly, that helps us out a lot with some of the outliers. Our first piece of evidence is this symbol. It's used in White Bear, White Christmas, and Playtest. We think that this is too much of a coincidence and might be confirmation that these 3 episodes are actually linked in a significant way. They all take place in cookies. Yes, I know it also appeared in Bandersnatch, but we think that that was a real event that helped spark off the rest of the timeline. Victoria Scyllane's torment is so cruel and unusual that it really sticks out. It's difficult to believe that any government would be able to torment a human being in such a way. However, a digital copy of a person, that's a bit more believable. We can see the white bear symbol while Cooper is trying out the AR game, and we see it on Joe's cell door. Could it be that this aspect of the cookie technology, being able to create game worlds, was developed by Saito Gemu and later sold to the criminal justice system to punish criminals or to invoke confessions from suspects? In White Christmas, Matthew mentions that cookies broken by spending too much time in solitary with nothing to do end up being sold cheap to the games industry. They'd become cannon fodder for some war thing. This could be a reference to Men Against Fire, as we said earlier. It's really unusual that no one is mentioning this war, especially UKN. What if Rolo transferring consciousnesses into limited formats spurs the UN into granting cookies human rights, a fact that we know has been confirmed in Hated in the Nation. So maybe by law, cookies now have to have something to do so they don't go insane. If so, this could help us place 2 more episodes, 15 Million Merits and Nosedive. What if 15 Million Merits is a game show for cookies? We talked earlier about its out-of-place dystopian setting, but what if that's because it doesn't actually exist? This also helps to explain the existence of one particular character, Selma. Selma is the first winner of Hot Shot, the reality TV show in 15 Million Merits. But the same actress also has a role in Playtest as the technology correspondent Sonia. Now, it might just be that the actress Hannah John Kamen impressed the team so much in her brief cameo in 15 Million Merits that they wanted to give her a meatier role, or it could be that her cookie was competing in Hot Shot and won. Think about it. In Playtest, Sonia is working as a technology correspondent who sometimes crosses over into the gaming sector. She would need to be on the cutting edge of technology, so her having a cookie isn't exactly out of the realm of possibility. And as for Nosedive, well, an elaborate social network for cookies. Think Second Life meets Facebook, Uber, LinkedIn, and also that terrifying new social credit system that's currently in place in China. Cookies in Nosedive have jobs, buy houses, and rate each other all the time. The perfect Black Mirror dystopian nightmare. And for Smithereens, a therapy network. Just like Hang the DJ runs thousands and thousands of tests to determine your ideal romantic partner, perhaps that's what's happening here. A digital version of Chris undergoing thousands of simulations to see what kind of treatment would best help him get over his grief. The run that we see in Smithereens is clearly not a very successful one. But this episode taking place entirely within a cookie does help to explain why everyone, and I mean everyone, is a part of Miriam's contact list. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. We have breakdowns of every episode from this new season of Black Mirror here on GameSpot Universe, as well as videos uncovering all those delicious Easter eggs. If there's something wrong with the timeline or you've noticed something that I've maybe missed, feel free to hit me up on Smithereen. I'm at Lucy James Games. I'll see you next time.